Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Monday. My name is Hanna Olivas, and I am with She Rises Studios. And today I'm joined with Michele Meza. Michele is an extraordinary woman who is a public speaker, international and national best-selling author. She's a mom, businesswoman, entrepreneur, powerhouse. But Michele and I have something in common. We're both domestic violence warriors. And so we wanted to come on live. As most of you know, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And there are so many things that are occurring at such a rapid pace concerning this topic. And so we wanted to talk to you. We wanted to have a heart to heart today. So, Michele, welcome.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for having me.
We just had a little pre chit chat about are we ready to talk about this subject? And, you shared that it's an emotional time. Some of these things can, be trigger related for, we don't live that life anymore, but we know what it feels like to live that life. And so, you know, how do we share our stories without it coming across as us sounding, because I don't like to use the word victim. I say we're warriors because
Mhm.
we did more than survive. We came out and we're thriving on the other side. So, what do you think is one message, Michele, that we could convey today to anyone who's experiencing domestic violence currently?
I have one message for anyone who is, just going through it right now. And, when I think back to when I was at that place to where I was, in the trenches, just dealing with it. And I felt like I was trapped. I felt like I couldn't get out. I felt like no one would believe me. But I'm here to tell you that I believe you. Hannah and I support you. We may not know you, but we hear you. And I just want you to know that there is a way out. And we'll talk about those things today. But I just want you to know that you are loved and you are valued. And I'm sorry that, your current situation, nobody sees your value right now. But, I do want you to know that this is only a chapter in your story, and you have an entire journey, you have a purpose, and you will come through this.
I think it's important to cover in today's discussion the different forms of domestic violence that exist. One is physical, of course. Another is emotional and mental abuse combined with the physical abuse. I know as a warrior, I had almost a 6 year journey with my ex, and he almost killed me. And had someone not found me, I wouldn't be here today. And so when we talk about this topic, it's so touchy. So many people want to hide it because they're embarrassed. Women don't feel that they're worthy to be heard. And I'm here to say you are. I'm here to say that things can change. They will change if you're willing to fight. And I don't mean with your fists, I mean with your mind. Understanding your worthiness, understanding that you deserve the love and the care from someone and from your support system. That it is okay to speak out and share that this is happening. It is okay to be afraid. It is okay to ask for help. It is okay to utilize the services that are out there. You'd be surprised when you speak out and use your voice, how many people truly want to help, how many people care. And, domestic violence doesn't just come in the physical form, it comes by abuse of power as well, sexual issues. So I want it's so hard because some people consider it a controversial topic, right? I mean, we just, they don't want to hear it, or some people just want to sweep it under the rug. But the fact is, we can't. The rates are so much higher right now. And we were talked about that too, Michele. Why do you think it's so much worse this year? versus even last year. And last year it was pretty bad. What do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it has really increased over since COVID. The fear, the stress, just of the uncertainty of our world, and then this year with inflation and just different things like coming at us in many different directions. People are constantly fighting to pay rent, to pay mortgage,
Yeah.
to put food on the table. And a lot of people end up taking stress out, of course, on those around them and the ones who they claim they love, and but love doesn't hurt, and that's what I volunteer at a lot of shelters. I don't really talk about it. I just don't. But that's the one message that I communicate to these women in the shelters is, love doesn't hurt.
Mhm.
And even though, it's okay to have healthy, conflict, like of course you're in a relationship, you're not going to get along all the time, but
Mm.
it shouldn't hurt you. It shouldn't hurt you emotionally, physically, and other ways too. So yeah, definitely a rise this year, especially.
Yeah. What do you say to those women who believe that they can change the abuser?
Well, that is such a loaded question, Hannah. There's lots of things involved. For me, my experience with that, I just look back on my family and I ended up, we end up repeating the cycles if we don't acknowledge what's going on and
Mm.
pursue breaking those patterns and those cycles, picking different people, seeking help, because we all come with baggage. It really doesn't matter what your family dynamic looks like and how you grew up. You could have a perfect home, but if there's some type of conflict there that's not resolved, it just is passed down on to the next generation. And for me, to my knowledge, I was the third generation repeating this cycle. And I felt like I couldn't, that I didn't have a voice. And I just didn't know of a way to get out. I was embarrassed. I didn't know who to turn to. I was scared. I was threatened, and this was 10 years ago. So, of course, there were shelters and things out there, but I wasn't aware of anything.
I think, let's talk about that for a second. I'm my family, my grandparents, one was abusive, the other stayed until their death. My mother was abused. She got out, and then came me. So third generation. So I think as mothers, whether you have a son or daughter, knowing what you've gone through or what you're going through now, is that something that you want to display to your children, or do you want better? Because what they're exposed to, what they see, becomes a learned pattern for them. Or they grow up in a fearful environment, they grow up in a fight or flight mode, they grow up guarded, hurt. So what things can we do to break these chains and get away, to get out? And a lot of women stay because they're scared, because they've been stay-at-home moms, or they don't know if they can make it on their own. That's the reality. They're so beaten down and so broken by the abuser that they believe there's nothing else out there that exists for them and goodness. And so what do you think are some things that we could do to really change that narrative and really stand up against something like this, because this is terrible.
It is. And, no, people just briefly talk about domestic violence and raising awareness, but actually, what is awareness? We can talk about it all day long, but, I always say the term, don't talk about it, be about it. It requires action and
Yeah.
support, not only from the person going through it, but actually, our support system. And Hannah, I'm so glad that you brought that up about what does it look like for our children. That was the point I decided, and I'll never forget that moment. That
Mm.
as I was barricaded in one of my daughter's rooms, I had both of them in her bed, and I stayed up all night looking at them. And I really looked at my life 5, 10 years from then at that moment. And I realized, like, what am I teaching my daughters? I'm teaching them that it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to allow this to happen. And if that's all they know, that's what's going to happen, because that's exactly what happened to me I never left fight or flight, and I didn't even realize that. I didn't even know about that until I went through therapy and realized, oh wow, I don't really have to live in this mode of
Yeah.
like panic and survival. It's like, you flip a coin, and that's kind of how it was. And the one thing that I notice that's common in, as I speak to women who they're able to get out, most of them end up going back because they feel they can't support themselves. And a lot of that is due to isolation. And, I was a tenured college instructor at the time. During my situation, I was next in line for dean at this college. And I almost lost my job, almost lost my career because he was so controlling and jealous that I couldn't really go to work. I couldn't even walk across the buildings to my classes or speak to my students publicly without something happening, or fear of something happening. And, I think once we get in that mode in fight or flight, it's just easier to follow the isolation.
Mm.
And so a lot of, the issues around that is, you end up being a stay-at-home mom, or you end up losing your job or whatever reason, and there you are stuck. And so
Mm.
the first thing that I would suggest is a safety plan. You've
Mhm.
got to get a plan together. And it can start with $5 a month, $5 a week, whatever it takes, or sell some items or whatever it is. That you got to start with something.
Mm.
And that's where a lot of people, and that's what we never talk about, right? Is how to get out, how to start. And that's where it starts, is you've got to have some type of plan together. Almost like, I spent a few years in retail management. And when we trained our people at our stores, it's called crisis management. And so, if there's an intruder, if there's someone pulled out a gun at the register, what do you do? And what are those steps to protect the patrons there and your team? And so it's no different in your household. And I
That's right.
think once people realize, like, oh my gosh, yeah, I never thought about a plan. No, you haven't thought about it because you're in this survival mode. You're trying to like protect your brain from exploding. Of course you don't think about that.
Yeah. It's true. When you're in it, it's different because you are in that fight or flight mode when you're in it. I can't, I hate to say this, but this is a part of the abuse that I experienced. And I used to pray that he would die, um, so that I wouldn't have to worry about it. I didn't see an escape anymore. And I used to pray that, he would die so that we could leave, that we would, not have to go through this. And my abuser didn't just abuse me, but he abused my children. And and he stalked me. It was awful. And living one day like that, or even 5 years, in my case it was almost 6 years, always having to look over your shoulder, always wondering what's next, be walking on eggshells. You become so afraid of everything and everyone. You don't know who to trust. But one thing I was so afraid to do was even speak out and say, this is happening, because I was afraid I was going to be judged, that
Mhm.
no one would understand. There's a lot of judgment that happens to women who speak out. Well, I wouldn't take that if it was me, but you don't know that. The person that you're sharing your story to, the person that you're going to help. So this is to those people. When someone comes to you and says, I am being abused, I need help, please know that that person was brave enough to come and talk to you and tell you that. And if you can't help that person or give that person words of encouragement or resources or advice, then don't say anything and find someone who can. Because the last thing that we need as warriors in the battle is judgment, is what you would or wouldn't do. That's not what it's about. What it's about is that person gaining enough strength to say, this is happening to me. I need to protect me. I need to protect my kids. And a lot of women do stay because of the financial issues, because their husbands, partners, whatever it is, have been so controlling that they have no money. They have no exit plan. And so, how do we break those chains? That's what one of the things that She Rises, we've talked about this for 3 years, helping women wherever they are in life and business, be financially fit. In other words, if you are in that space right now where you need to get out, we want to help you. We want you to be able to succeed, to be safe, to thrive, to not just to survive, but to actually thrive, because Michele is living proof of what that looks like to get out. I'm living proof of what it's like to get out. I want to see more women get out and move forward and live the life that they're supposed to with their children, happy, healthy, safe. So if you're that person that someone comes to you and says, I'm being abused, I don't know what to do, don't judge, because it can happen to anybody. We don't wear a sign on our forehead that says pick me. It can be anybody. And half the time it's people that you're closest to and you'd never know it. It's, you know.
That's so true. Yeah, and I come from a line of really strong women. I mean, we're just, and I'm Native American, so in our tribe, we're, known as, it's matriarchal. So, the matriarchs, the women are the boss, I guess, if you want to call it like 2023 version of what a matriarch is. But still, it can happen to anyone. And, I see the comments coming through, and I see a common thing like, the person who's doing the abuse, they're known in the community and things like that. That's kind of how it was with me. I was 1,200 miles from the nearest family member. So it was all about, his family was in town, and, just offering that support goes a long ways, and encouraging them for whatever it is, even if and that's kind of like what happened to me and how I got out is I ended up having to, he withheld the money, and I had a dance recital for one of my daughters and a birthday party outfit that I needed for one of my daughters. And they had outgrown their outfits, and he wouldn't give me the money to get so I made their clothes. And that's really what birthed my first e-commerce business.
Mm.
And, I had a clothing company, and that's where it started. And then I ended up having to pay the bills because things would get cut off. He was using the money for other things. And we would just sit in the dark, like, like, what are you going to do? Well, he didn't care because he wasn't at home. And, just being that light for them is so critical. Be an ally, be a supporter, encourage them to, that's my thing. Like, I was judged. I still get judged by people, even after, gaslighting is real, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like it's subtle. Like, for me, the people who were around me at the time, including family members, I hate to say it, but I mean, look, I keep it real. It was very subtle things that they would say. And I already had self-doubt for not wanting to leave, because, we as warriors, as survivors, we hold on to that little glimmer of hope, because things are good, they're good. And when they're not, they're not. And it's never anything in between. But then, we have those good moments where, oh, you want to hold on to them. Well, maybe I don't need to leave him. It'll get better. He's changing. And then 2 weeks go by and it falls right back into the same pattern. So just really being that source of encouragement and actually believing them. That's the first step. Is if I had someone who actually believed me instead of making me think I was crazy and delusional, I would have left a lot sooner than I did.
Yeah. I don't share this too often, but domestic violence hit our lives in a couple of forms. One, by the abuse that I received, the abuse that my children received. I escaped it, left it, never went back, became financially fit, changed everything about my life, who I am, what I do. Remarried to the most amazing man in the world. And we have this incredible life. And, almost 8 years into our marriage, he has a daughter from a previous relationship, and her mother was a victim of domestic violence. And she took the life of her abuser, and then she took the life of her own, leaving us Sophia, who is now 11 years old. Sophia's mommy is dead. And one of the questions that runs through my mind, and my husband and I just had this conversation literally 2 days ago because the third anniversary of her death was Monday last week. And I said, this woman was surrounded by people. Did no one see? Did no one hear her cries for help? Did no one understand? There are signs. They're there. If you are paying attention to your friends and the women that you are hanging around with, there are signs. There are signals. There are sirens happening. And if you're one of those friends that likes to sweep it under the rug because you don't want to get involved because it's not your business, make it your business.
Mm-hmm.
Because had someone made it their business for Deborah, I believe she would be here today. I believe her children would be in a different place. And Sophia would have the best of both worlds, her mommy, her bonus mommy, and her daddy. And so domestic violence is real. It doesn't always end with a slap on the wrist and handcuffs. It does. We're living proof. Our family is living proof that it ended in death of the abuser and the abusee. That is not okay. That is not okay. So it's more like you said, don't just talk about it, be about it. So let's talk about how can we be about it?
Man, I'm so sorry to hear that, and I do want to share some statistics with you before we talk about like what to do, is because the reason why I want to share these statistics with you is one of those statistics involves death. So 1 in 3 women experience domestic violence. 1 in 3.
Mm.
So if you can imagine, a group of women out at a restaurant, 1 in 3 of those women are actively in domestic violence or have survived it. 1 in 4 men, because now we see the rise of, it's like the roles are reversing. But again, it goes back to those generational cycles. Have experienced some form of domestic violence in their lifetime from their partner. 4 in 5 women and indigenous communities experience some type of domestic violence. And that's really, I've spent years of dedication in Native communities, and it's real. I mean, it's just, you've got a lot of lack of resources, generational cycles, just lack of opportunities there. People are already stressed. And in this, everybody's in the fight or flight. But then on average, 15 women per day are spent in the hospital. And out of those women, 2 out of 5 are either kind of in that situation where, they end up either passing, from their partner abuser, or they take their own life. And so I wanted to share those statistics with everyone because a lot of people really don't know. I mean, nobody really talks about the real numbers. Mm-hmm. And so what we can do, how do we navigate this? And first of all, talking about it, being a safe place for your friend or your family member, to not sweep it under the rug, to just listen. If I would have had someone I trusted enough to just vent to, then I feel like those people, that support system, eventually would have said, you know what, let's do something about this. And, there's a 1-800 number. I don't really see it often unless you follow those pages of those organizations. But I just want to share the 1-800 number. If you're listening and you're experiencing this, there's people available 24/7. And so the number is 1-800-799-7233. And what I love, and I've actually called that hotline before for other people, because I've been around family members, or I've been around friends, kind of they ran to me. They're like, they remember that I had already experienced that. And so, it's one thing to just give somebody the number. It's kind of like the suicide hotline. When you're in that state of mind, you're not going to pick up the phone. That's the last thing you're going to do. But what you can do is dial the number for them. And that's what I did with one of my friends. I dialed the number. I sat with her. And those counselors are amazing. I mean, they are very attentive, and they help you. They provide those resources for you right then on the spot. They ask where you're at, if you're safe at the moment, different things like that. And if you think, like, if you're in that situation and maybe you can't get to a phone or whatever, be that person who says, are you safe? Meet me at this street corner or this house or this park, and I'll pick you up and I'll take you or you and your children to a shelter. I mean, there are a lot of shelters in just about every city.
Yes.
And even in the rural areas, we have a lot of rural areas in the United States. There are more people, churches. There's lots of churches and pastors and counselors, therapists, even counselors at schools, at your children's school. They are actually professionally trained to know what to do and to navigate that. So you have more resources than you think. And so just, if you're experiencing someone who, is going through that, just helping them navigate. And that's what I talked a few minutes ago about a safety plan. You're supporting them by helping them navigate things. And, because when you're in this fight or flight mode, your brain doesn't work logically, right? It's like safety plan. What do I do? It's like a fire, like, unless you walk through it in your mind several times a month, you're not going to really remember that safety plan.
I wanted to address the comment about, women who are married, women who have, believe that their families are saying, well, till death do us part. And here's what I want to say to that. To those families who expect a woman or man to stay in a physically, mentally, emotionally abusive relationship because of a vow, I don't believe in my heart that God wants any human being to live a life of abuse. Now, that person can change, but that person needs to change, meaning the abuser, outside of the existing relationship, meaning that that husband and wife need to separate and that person needs to seek major help. And, we cannot be judged for making a conscious decision for wanting to leave an abusive relationship and take our children with us. We are their mothers. We are to protect them. And so it isn't just about protecting us, it's even our kids. So to those families who say, stay and work it out, shame on you, because there's no amount of money in the world that would ever bring your son or daughter or your grandchild back from death, from being a victim of domestic violence. And that's the reality. So I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about this throughout the rest of this month. We'll definitely have Michele back on. But today, here's what I want to leave this discussion with, and that is, if you are being abused, use the resources. Shelters are temporary. It's not a forever thing, but it's a stepping stone. Utilizing the phone numbers out there, take the first step and get out. And remember that you're worthy. You are worthy of good. You deserve a life of abundance, of love. Like you said, Michele, love doesn't hurt. Love shouldn't hurt your kids. Love shouldn't hurt you. And if you are being surrounded by people that are telling you to stay, get away from them too, because that is a form of domestic violence as well. So, what number can they call again?
Yes, the number is 1-800-799-7233.
And you are also, for those of you who are watching this, please share this. You may reach someone and not even know it. If someone out there wants to reach out to us, we keep it confidential. We can direct you to resources. I'm in the Las Vegas, Nevada area. We can get you plugged in somewhere, wherever you are. Maybe today's the day that you walk away and you begin a new life and you start over. And it is scary. It is, but you can do it. You just have to take the first step. And that is using your voice. We talk about this all the time. Use your voice. You have strength in your voice, in your story, and you deserve a life of love, of kindness, of blessings, of good health, and so do your children. So thank you, Michele, for coming on today. And sharing your wisdom and insight. And I hope that this makes a difference for someone today. And we'll definitely be talking more about this throughout the month. But you know what? Let's not just continue talking about this just because it's October. Let's be about it, like you said. Let's be about it. And really pay attention, ladies and gentlemen, to those around you because, as Michele stated, it's 1 in 3, which means that you probably know more than one person experiencing domestic violence. And that is a very scary statistic. So let's help save some people. Let's be that support that they need so that they don't have to be a victim anymore. Anything else you want to share before we go?
I just wanted to encourage you, if you are watching this, somehow it comes across your news feed, I just want you to know that I love you and I believe in you. And
Yeah.
you are stronger than this situation. And if you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for your children. Most of us, I just want you to know that there is shame tied to it, but there's no shame. There's no shame in how you ended up in this situation. You are not your situation, and there's so much more for you on the other side. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you.